Pastor Tom Hughes together. Well, guess what? He's going to be out. He may be out a couple of weeks just because he's got a lot of things going on. He's going to be traveling. Many of you guys know he's going to do some prophecy conferences in Las Vegas and a few other places. But what is interesting, or what's a blessing, is I have got the great Don Stewart tomorrow, who, yes, he is going to join me live. And that is going to be a awesome show. I think it's going to be great, and I think it's going to be a blessing because I think it will be the very first time that Don, since his heart attack, has been able to answer questions live. So that's going to be great. I think he's going to love that, and make sure you reach out to him, educatingourworld.com. It's a great place to go support him. He could definitely use the support for that, okay? So with that, let's get into the subject matter at hand, and that is the subject of freedom. Now, first, I just want to stop to simply describe freedom the way the Bible teaches us concerning that. You have to go back to the Garden of Eden. You've got to go back to creation when God created mankind, and he basically said that I have given you everything in the land for you to have dominion over. I want you to be blessed by it. He gives Adam a series of responsibilities, gives him a partner, a lovely wife. Everything is set for Adam and for mankind based on what God had chosen to do for him. Pretty amazing thing when you think about it. What he had was insanely cool. What he had was a huge blessing. And yet the Bible tells us that through one man, sin entered the world. And this is where the discussion of freedom should begin. Because when we talk about the subject of sin as we understand it and as we know it, we know that whatever sin does, and it does a lot of things, one of the most significant things that it has, one of the most significant properties that it carries, is the loss of freedom to anybody who capitulates to it. Now, how do I know that? Let's talk about what happened in the garden. You see, the Bible says that Adam chose to rebel against God. God told him that he was not to eat of the fruit. He ended up eating of the fruit at a huge detriment to all of mankind. We can actually thank Adam for that. We can't thank Eve for it. We have to thank Adam. And what is remarkably interesting about what happened to Adam at the moment that that took place was that you can make a very good argument over the fact that Adam lost his freedom on that very day. He was given to bondage because that's what sin does. The very moment Adam chose to say, I am going to rebel against God, he not only put himself in bondage, but he put the whole world in bondage, because the Bible says that through one man, sin entered the world. And when sin enters the world through one man, what sin does is leave nothing but destruction in its wake. It leaves nothing but bondage in its wake. It leaves nothing but destruction in its wake. And this is not anything that we don't know. This is something that we have already talked about. Isn't that funny, Dale? All I'm doing is talking about sin. And I've already been demonetized. Isn't that great? Oh, Lord, help us all, huh? But what I think is amazing about this, it's amazing. If you talk about the subject of sin and freedom, YouTube in their AI just sees it fit to just shut you all down. Isn't that crazy? I'm sorry, but I just have to say something about that. I shouldn't let it take my train of focus off, but that is the definition of complete insanity. But anyway, going back to bondage, going back to sin, let's talk about this for a second. Because the Bible makes it very clear to us that when man chose to rebel against God, sin entered the world, and anytime sin enters into any scenario, the result is bondage. The result is a loss of freedom. The result is, in essence, destruction. That's what happens. That's how it works. Now, I think the thing that is uniquely interesting to me is the fact that man, instead of recognizing the bondage that sin brought them into, and you would think they would, knowing their history, man chooses to continue to allow itself to be given to the very mechanism that hogtied them and took away their freedom. Now, we see this a lot. We watch this happening on big levels, and we watch it happening on small levels, that anytime godlessness is involved in the equation, the loss of freedom is also involved. As a matter of fact, the introduction to bondage is something that we all see and is a very, very normal part of what happens when people capitulate to those evil things. That's the reality of it. Now, I think that it's important for me to bring this about because you need to understand that when we are given to sin, that when we are given to these evil things, that very sin puts us in a position where we are now separated from God. And in our separation from God, we have no freedom. In our separation from God, we are given to our trespasses and sins. And a very important part of our insides are completely killed. It's destructive. It's very, very sad, but that's the reality of what we are facing every day from day to day. And the problem is this. We know this. It's not like we don't know this. Look, this is something that the Bible talks about on a regular basis. Understand how important it is to point out, realize, recognize, see, understand, discern that if you want to be free, the only way to experience freedom is through a relationship with God, through what his son Jesus Christ has done for us. Your salvation is not tied into your actions. The credit that is given to you comes from the actions of Jesus Christ. And this is all very basic. This is sort of Bible 101. But you know and I know that the closer you become to Christ, the more free you begin to be, because you experience the result of what happens when your brokenness that was a result of your sin becomes healed as a result of Christ's perfection. Now, with that in mind, let me make a statement that I think is very, very important. When a nation, or an individual for that matter, but in this case, we'll just say a nation, when a nation or a government chooses to completely deny God from the equation, when they say they want nothing to do with the true and living God, what they then bring to the picture is nothing other than bondage. What happens is they are given to the ideal and the mindset of secular humanism. They're given to the philosophies that the world continues to carry. And those philosophies believe in totalitarianism. Those philosophies lead to the ideals oftentimes represented in secular humanism, which of course, the culmination of what is represented in secular humanism brings you to the world of the dialectic. When you don't have Christ, you begin to believe in things that have no foundation for righteousness. And I also think it's incredibly important to understand and know that the only way out, the only way freedom is able to reign in any nation is if that nation is allowed to stay and remain close to the true and living God. And right now we are watching an unprecedented attack on religious liberty, the kind of attack that we have never seen before. It is a huge problem And we will continue to see that problem grow. And we will continue to see that issue increase as long as people's minds and hearts are not focused on the true and living God. Now, why is it that Christians need to speak up concerning these things? Because it is my contention that Christians have everything, every little bit to do with how a nation flourishes or not flourishes. We need to get our minds on the Lord, and we need to stop thinking about what will hurt other people or what won't hurt other people. The truth is the truth, and it's very important that we understand that. This kind of thing is absolutely ridiculous when we think that we can fix a problem outside of the help of the Spirit of God in trying to do so. But what does that mean? How does that translate? Well, it translates in a very simple way. It translates in Christians seeking to be honest about what is currently going on, and as a result of their commitment to Christ, they choose to stand up for righteousness and not act out in ways where they just simply allow the freedoms to erode in a nation that has afforded them the ability to be able to worship God freely. This is very, very important. Now, I think that what's going on, and I think it's an important thing to recognize, is the fact that we are in that time now where our freedoms are being removed from us. And we've got to start thinking twice about those things. I'm going to mute this for just 1 second, guys. Just 1 second. I guarantee you the reason why. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Had a little technical issue we had to fix. All right, so with all that said, and a little bit of that background kind of under your belt where you kind of understand where things come from, I want you to look at an article that came my way from Zero Hedge. Now, the article actually says, despotism is the new normal, looming threats to freedom in 2022. This article, by the way, was a pretty moving article. I read it and I thought, oh my goodness, they are right on the money. And I actually believe that what they're writing here is really, truly correct. Now, I'm going to read to you what he says because there's a lot of commentary that I'd like to offer on what's actually said. And he makes this comment. He says it right out the beginning. And by the way, I wonder how the internet defines despotism, because some people, it is kind of interesting. I'm going to actually look this up. I'm curious to know if they've corrupted that definition as well. Let me see here. Let's see if they've corrupted that. Sometimes, let me see here. I'm doing this on the fly because I'm curious. I probably should have done this for the research, but let's see here. Oh, no way. They have not changed it at all. I thought for sure they would have changed it to call it, American imperialism or something like that, right? I'm surprised that they've actually kept that open and honest. Their definition is the exercise of absolute power, especially in a cruel and oppressive way. I bet you anything that if I looked that up on Wikipedia, it would probably say American imperialism or some crazy nonsense like that. I'm very surprised that they did not do that here. Anyway, that's sort of a besides the point. But look at what this author says. It's very, very interesting and very important. It says, despotism has become our new normal. That's how this thing starts. And he goes on to say, digital tyranny, surveillance, intolerance, cancel culture, censorship, lockdowns, mandates, government overreach, supply chain shortages, inflation, police brutality. The police brutality thing is kind of an interesting thing. I'm going to have to address that. And the way he addresses it in the article is kind of interesting. We'll have to deal with that. Home invasions, martial law, the loss of bodily integrity, privacy, and autonomy. By the way, just for the record, when we talk about the phrase police brutality, he's not referring to police brutality as it's being depicted right now by the hard left and the critical race theorists. He's not talking about police that are going down and hunting down the black man, which is not happening, right? That's not the situation that's being discussed here. The situation that's actually being discussed, and this is a very important thing, what is literally being spoken of here is the brutality of those that are in authority in order to accomplish the directive of a tyrannical government. Okay, so we're not talking about, some racist cop that runs rogue and does something crazy. We're talking about tyranny being exercised through the brutal force of those that have been given the authority to execute force. Okay, that's what he's talking about here. And that's kind of an important thing to remind everybody of. So he starts off by saying, these acts of tyranny by authoritarian governments have long been seized to alarm or unnerve us. We have become desensitized to government brutality, accustomed to government corruption, and unfazed by the government's assaults on our freedom. And that's actually very true. That process, I really truly believe, began even before we started seeing some of this stuff happening with the recent pandemic stuff. I think it's extended beyond that. I believe it's extended far beyond that. So he goes on to explain some very interesting things. He says, first and foremost, he said the present trajectory is unsustainable. The center cannot hold. It's very interesting. I'll get into that in just a minute, what he means when he says that. The following danger points pose some of the greatest threats to our collective and individual freedoms now and in the year to come. So the first item that he brings is a very important one, and that is the subject of censorship. And I have to be careful how I say this because we don't want to get censored for bringing up or talking about the subject of censorship, but we might as well talk about it because this kind of stuff needs to get exposed out in the open, and it's mission critical for us to have that conversation. So censorship, the most controversial issues of our day: gay rights, abortion, race, religion, sexuality, political correctness, police brutality, et al., meaning everything included with it, have become battlegrounds for those who claim to believe in freedom of speech, but only when it favors the views and positions they support. Thus, while on paper they are technically free to speak, in reality, we are only as free to speak as the government and tech giants such as Facebook, Google, YouTube may allow. That's, by the way, very true. Yet it's a slippery slope from censoring so-called illegitimate ideas to silencing truth. What we are witnessing is the modern day equivalent of book burning, which involves doing away with dangerous ideas, legitimate or not, and the people who espouse them. Unfortunately, censorship is just the beginning. Once you allow the government and its corporate partners to determine who is a worthy enough to participate society, anything goes. And that is true because that's exactly what's happening right now. Right now, we are censoring people at an insane rate. We are watching things get so incredibly crazy and out of control. And oftentimes, we're not doing anything about it because our own government has chosen to collude with larger tech agents because they have put laws in the books that prohibit citizens from using the remedies allotted to them in government when injustices take place, particularly as it relates to the violation of our First Amendment rights. By the way, one statement on the First Amendment, and I should probably say this, and actually on an overwhelming majority of the rights given to us or afforded to us in the Constitution, the framers of the Constitution always believed this, and they expressed it vividly on many different occasions and in many different ways. But what they actually told us on a pretty regular basis is they said that this is all about the freedoms afforded to us by our Creator. When the Constitution was penned to paper and the Bill of Rights were established, they were put together to, in essence, remove from us any tyrants who would get in the way of that which was given to us by God, of those freedoms. I think that this is a very, very important thing. I think this is something that we should know and understand and recognize. When we are censored, we are now basically removed from society when we come against that which society thinks. And that's a bad thing, because the problem with censorship is if we took censorship to its complete course, let's just say in the realm of science, we would still think the earth is flat. We would never have discovered America. Forget the virus that we're dealing with right now. Every other virus in the world would have killed us off. So many people who have thought things contrary to that of the mainstream have been deemed as crazy, but because they have had the ability to speak, because they've had the ability to freely exchange ideas with people around them, they were able to come to conclusions that were life-saving because the truth came out, because there was a freedom of expression to be able to establish that which is true. The problem with the hard left is this. The hard left basically says, hey, listen, the bottom line is we think that you should have the freedom of speech so long as your speech agrees completely with mine. That's basically what the idea is. Now, that's not called free speech. That's tyrannical behavior. And that's what censorship is all about. It's on the path for destruction. That's what they did to the prophet Jeremiah. When the prophet Jeremiah went and spoke to the children of Israel, when he spoke to the leaders of the southern kingdom, they didn't like what he had to say. So you know what they did? They censored him. They put him in jail. They kept him from being able to communicate. You know what Jeremiah still did? Even in jail, Jeremiah still communicated. His scrolls were burned, and he still rewrote them. That's very, very important. Look at the other thing that he writes here. This stuff, by the way, is just really good. I think this article was it was an impressive article. I really liked it. We will put the link. Actually, no, I don't think we can, but I'll give you, it's on zerohedge.com. You can grab this article. Name of the article again is Despotism is the New Normal, Looming Threats to Freedom in 2022. Very, very interesting stuff that he puts. The emergency state, that's the next thing he lists. He says now that the government has gotten a taste for flexing its police state powers by way of a bevy of lockdowns, mandates, restrictions, contact tracing programs, highlighted surveillance, censorship, overcriminalization, etc., we the people may well find ourselves burdened with a nanny state inclined to use its draconian pandemic powers to protect us from ourselves. Hopefully you guys are able to detect the sarcasm in the statement that he's actually making here, because there's a whole bunch of it. Therein lies the danger of the government's Machiavellian version of crisis management that justifies all manner of government tyranny in the so-called name of national security. This is the power grab hiding in plain sight. And by the way, in plain sight hiding is an absolutely accurate assertion as in what we are seeing. We are seeing a gnarly power grab, and it is ugly to see what's actually happening with this power grab. This is the type of thing, guys, that should wake everybody up. It should cause people to see through what is actually happening. And this power grab started a long time ago. It didn't just start with what happened here with the pandemic. It has started long before that, but the pandemic has simply accelerated everything that was going on. If you want an example of a power grab that went on that was substantial, that a lot of people didn't think about because fear was used as a tool to cause them to want to comply and to do what the government wanted, is 9/11. Some of you guys saw that interview that I did of a federal agent who worked for Homeland Security. Still has 3 children that are also detectives in Homeland Security. My head of security, he sat down and he told us he watched it before his eyes. When 9/11 took place, he was attached to counterterrorism. He was doing counterterrorism work. And in doing so, what actually happened was he witnessed the loss of so many freedoms under people's noses, and it didn't seem as though anybody really cared about those freedoms being lost. I think that's pretty amazing, to be honest with you. I think that it's kind of a unique thing when you begin to, just for a moment, stop to recognize the insanity associated with that. Think this through for just 1 second. The very moment 9/11 took place, don't get me wrong, I agree with the idea of the interoperability of information between agencies only to a limited degree. That was one of the big things that the Patriot Act actually made way for, is the interoperability of information. Now, I agree with the interoperability of information as it relates not necessarily to databases, but as it relates to communication. For example, you have a local municipal police department that has a walkie-talkie system where they can talk amongst one another from within that agency. They should be able to talk to other agencies anywhere they go in the country. I don't have a problem with that. But when you begin to take common databases that they each carry and give that information to one another, although it might not be in the particular possession of the federal government, it is in essence the federalization of a law enforcement community, which then becomes a posse comitatus issue. Without me getting into the legal ramifications of all of that, the Patriot Act, in essence, because of 9/11, sort of opened up the door for the possibility of the federalization of all law enforcement. Now, some people might look at that and say, James, that's just really crazy. Is it really? It was the Patriot Act that actually opened up the doors for more federal funding for local municipal police departments than any other act ever written in the history of the United States. It is the Patriot Act that opened up the door for database sharing, and the loopholes created in database sharing completely free up agencies from having to obtain warrants to be able to pull information that they would otherwise have to be able to obtain a warrant for. Now, who does that become advantageous to? It becomes advantageous to the federal agencies that choose to do the bidding of their corrupt leaders. This has nothing to do with the faithful law enforcement officers that are busting their tails every single day, doing everything that they are continuing to give their lives to do. It has everything to do with the raw power grab that a group of very corrupt ruling class oligarchs want so that they can put you in their place. Don't even get me started on some of the things Monkey talks about, where there's a bunch of detainee facilities that they have established all over the country, oftentimes in or near military installations, so that the enforcement of whatever those things are being used for is not difficult and is relegated to that of the federal government. What happens when they don't need those anymore? For detaining or ICE detainees. What happens? Kind of scared to think about it. And might I say they're already converting some of these places for other purposes, and I'll just leave it at that. Things are getting crazy. Freedoms are being eroded, and they're being eroded at an absolutely insane rate. And I do completely agree with the author of this article who says that this power grab is hiding in plain sight. Look at the next section that he addresses. He says pre-crime. Now, some of you may have heard of this. If you've ever watched the movie, and I haven't watched it, a lot of people have mentioned it yet. You know that movie that where they're, what's the name of that movie? Minority Report. That's right. I have not watched that movie yet, but this is Minority Report happening literally right now. Look what he says when he writes pre-crime. He says the government is about to rapidly expand its policing efforts to focus on pre-crime and, notice this, thought crimes. That's really a nice way of saying we're dealing with thought crimes. That's what they're talking about here. Pre-crime, straight out of the realm of dystopian science fiction movies such as Minority Report. Oh, that's right. That's where that name of that movie came out, because he mentioned in this article. I read this article a few days ago. I'm like, oh, that's where it came from. Aims to prevent crimes before they happen by combining widespread surveillance, behavior prediction technologies, data mining, precognitive technology, and neighborhood and family snitch programs to enable police to capture would-be criminals before they can do any damage. The intent, of course, is for government to be all-seeing, all-knowing, all-powerful in its preemptive efforts to combat domestic extremism, a broad label that can be applied to anything or anyone that the government perceives to be a threat to its power. And that is so absolutely true. That is exactly what we are seeing going on right now in that realm. And folks, let me just tell you, it's an ugly one. It is one that is getting really, really bad, because pre-crime, the definition of the practical application of pre-crime, are you ready for this? What happened on January 6th? That is a perfect definition of the pre-crime mentality that he's actually talking about. They took what happened on January 6th and they used that to justify preemptive action based on belief systems or identities. If you don't believe me, let me explain what I mean in further detail. They say that if you are a supporter of Trump or you stand against critical race theories in school boards, that you fit the white evangelical mold, and thus you are a danger to society. You are considered by them to be a domestic terrorist. They're putting you on no-fly lists. They are getting extremely insane with the representations that they're making concerning their fear that you will do something really bad. And they're now even beginning to hold against you a medical decision that you choose to make for you and your family. As a matter of fact, you are being deemed a danger to society if you yourself choose not to follow along with the absurd mandates. Even if you are like me, and you paid your dues with the School of Hard Knocks, and you actually had this virus, and you have a remarkably strong immunity, they are still going to penalize you for not going through the medical procedure, as I would call it, and for not putting on your hijab in public. That's exactly what we're dealing with here. Exactly. That's what we continue to face. I want you to understand something. And this is extraordinarily important that you understand. When we see the word pre-crime, or what we like to call anticipatory action, or what we call the thought police beginning to take place in a society, it's almost too far gone. And we're already there in the United States of America. We are already in that place. Here's a big one, and this one should be no surprise to anybody. If you think this is not true, then, man, you need to wake up from the coma that you're in. Please forgive me for saying that, but that's the truth. The next one we see here is the surveillance state. This all-seeing fourth branch of government, comprised of a domestic army of government snitches, spies, and techno warriors, watches everything we do, reads everything we write, listens to everything we say, and monitors everywhere we go. Beware of what you say, what you read, what you write, where you go, and with whom you communicate, because it is being recorded, stored, and cataloged, and will be used against you eventually at a time and a place of the government's choosing. Even agencies not traditionally associated with intelligence community are part of the government's growing network of snitches and spies. And if you think that is a crazy, out-of-control statement, you have lost your mind. Nothing could be further from the lie that continues to be communicated that says everything is fine and nobody's watching everything. They are watching all of it. They are looking at all of it. It is very, very true that that is happening. They're measuring things from your watches. They're watching things from your phones. And they continue to take advantage of all of these things in order to be able to affect the kind of control that they want to have over you. That is the ugly reality of the very thing that we are facing on a day-to-day basis, and that is the truth of what we are looking at right now. Mikey Sanchez, this is good that you bring this up. One of LA's finest. Whoever rewards evil for good, evil will not depart from his house. Proverbs 17:13. That is very, very true. Our nation is in a bad place, and you are right. And unfortunately, it continues to be in a bad place because of the lies we allow ourselves to capitulate to. By the way, I'm saying all of this to a group of very godly people that are watching because as Christians, we're the ones responsible for this. Twyla Nicholson, thank you so much. You guys are helping to monetize the demonetization that happened. It's pretty funny. But you've got to understand what we're looking at here, folks. We are looking exactly at that happening. The surveillance state is very real. I'm going to read to you, probably in the show that I do with Don Stewart tomorrow, an article regarding some of Elon Musk's newest technology. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you saw the announcement that came out a few weeks ago. Elon Musk is releasing a new phone. And as I am looking at the properties of the phone, I'm like, this thing is going to be incredible when they release it. I can't wait. But there's one aspect of the phone that they call an enhancement that they are going to be adding. Ready for this one? It's a microchip that will be implanted in your brain so that what is going on in your brain will be effectively communicated with your phone, and your phone will be able to anticipate the action that you choose to take, thus you being able to be much safer while you're on your phone. So to give you an idea of this, what this eventually will do is this will eventually enable you to think, I want to call somebody, and your phone just saying, yeah, I'm going to do it. Now, why am I bringing that up? Okay, I'm bringing that up because the bottom line is, if that really does come into fruition and we see technology like that being adapted everywhere, then now your very thoughts are going to be monitored by the government. Sally Olin, thank you for your support. And yes, you are right. Sally asked this question, and it is true. She says, doesn't China have an AI officer to convict people just like Minority Report? Yes. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting. This is an AI, what would be called a district attorney. It's a robotic officer that actually does use anticipatory heuristics to effect arrest and conviction of people in China. People that have not been correctly earning their social credits or having some of their social credits erased. People who aren't following. And China is now bragging about the fact that they believe that this AI technology is 97% correct. Well, what about the 3%? What's 3% of a billion people? That's a big number. That's a lot of people being falsely imprisoned. And forget false imprisonment in China. What about some of the rules that they have that are completely a farce? Think about that for a second. Think about the insanity associated with that. The surveillance state, ladies and gentlemen, is alive and well, and I want you to be aware of it because the surveillance state is going to move in a direction that it's going to continue to rob us of our freedom, and we are already there. By the way, one of the things you should know about a surveillance state is the fact that oftentimes, by the time the citizenry of any government recognizes a surveillance state, is in full effect, that surveillance state has already done what it's supposed to do and is so deeply embedded within the veins and the lymph nodes of that government, of that state, that it is almost impossible for it to be removed. That's where things are going. This is amazing. Listen to what else it goes on to say. This one's a crazy one. He calls this section genetic privacy. Guilt by association has taken on new connotations in the technological age. Yet the debate over genetic privacy and when one's DNA becomes a public commodity outside the protection of the Fourth Amendment's prohibition on warrantless searches and seizures is really only the beginning. And boy, is he right about that. The violation on the Fourth and Fifth Amendments that have been taking place in this government, in this country for quite some time, has been absolutely staggering, and nobody is kicking and screaming about it. If you don't believe me, let's even sweeten the deal by talking about the lack of due process that many people have been receiving on January 6th. How about the fact that of every single one of the charges that are made publicly known that have been filed against anybody that was arrested on January 6th, not a single one of them were charged with insurrection. Yet it's the term that we continue to use. With all of that said, none of those issues are the real big issues here. The bigger issue is what they're about to do with the ability to be able to watch your genetics. And by the way, I do think it's the ultimate hypocrisy, because when you take one moment to just think about the ideals behind Roe versus Wade, which by the way is the biggest garbage case ever, and I do think is going to get overturned by the Supreme Court on this particular Mississippi case, let me just simply tell you this. The big overwhelming issue with Roe was the simplicity of the fact that women were entitled to their own privacy with respect to the decisions that they made that related to the abortion of a child. In other words, they say that the child was not viable, the child is a part of their own physical bodies, and the government does not have the right to infringe upon the privacy entitled them by the Constitution to make such a statement, which, by the way, the Constitution affords no expectation of privacy as it relates to those things, but because of case law and legislation through the bench, we have sort of modified the Constitution to do that, which, by the way, that's why Casey is a garbage case, that's why Roe is a garbage case, and that's why what they have relied upon, which they call the legal doctrine of stare decisis, is not going to have an effect or a play as it relates to Roe if these judges are going to be honest and if they're going to be if they're going to be safe with respect to what they're obligated to do. If they're going to have the blinders on and the scales of justice like Lady Liberty is supposed to, they are going to literally shut the doors on Roe. I'm just telling you that right now. And I'm sorry, I'm putting on the lawyer hat and I'm beginning to get carried away, so I'll just leave that be. But it's funny how he mentioned the Fourth Amendment. Automatically, I think the Fifth Amendment, I think the 14th. There's several amendments that I can think of automatically that would apply to some of these invasive types of technologies. But genetic privacy is a big one because we're beginning to talk about DNA here. And if you don't think that's a big deal, let me just explain something to you. Let's say you're a convicted murderer. You kill somebody out of a crime of passion. Maybe someone was trying to break into your house and you killed them and then you got convicted of murder. They'll take your DNA and they'll say, this is what's going to happen in the future. Well, anybody that comes from his DNA has to probably be, at least carry some propensity for the action of murder. And so we're going to treat them like murderers before they ever do anything because we're anticipating the fact that they will do like their father did. No joke. That's where this kind of stuff is going to be going. So, he goes on to say, helped along by Congress, which adopted legislation allowing police to collect and test DNA immediately following arrests. The courts, which have ruled that police can routinely take DNA samples from people who are arrested but not yet convicted of a crime, and local police agencies, which are chomping at the bit to acquire this new crime-fighting gadget, has embarked on a diabolical campaign to create a nation of suspects predicted on a massive national DNA database. Exactly what I just shared with you. That's exactly where it's going to go. They're going to take your DNA and they're going to say, based on your DNA, you have a propensity to commit murder because you are related to somebody who did commit murder. Thus, it's in your DNA. And this goes with the same line that's being taught by critical theory and critical race theory, that there are certain particular immutable characteristics that establish your moral authority. And because of that immutability, we have no ability to be able to correct whatever it is that we may end up doing. Thus, if your DNA matches up with the type of DNA that has a propensity to do such evil, we're going to do away with you before you ever do anything. By the way, let me tell you where that's going to start. They're going to look for Anglo-Saxons first. They're going to look for white people because white peoples are the devils. That's exactly where this is going, folks. That's exactly where this is going. This is another good subject that he identifies. He says bodily integrity. This one's big. This one's really, really big. Look what he says here. Bodily integrity. It doesn't matter what your trigger issue is, whether it's vaccine, abortion, crime, religion, immigration, terrorism, or some overtly politicized touchstone used by politicians as a rallying cry for votes. We should all be concerned when governments and businesses, i.e. the corporate state, or like I like to call it, the corporate industrial complex. That's what I call it, me personally. I'm not the author here. I'm calling it that. When they join forces to compel individuals to sacrifice their right to bodily integrity on the altar of so-called safety and national security. We're watching it happen right now, by the way, on a national, actually on a global level, we're watching that happen. This debate over bodily integrity covers a broad territory ranging from abortion to forced vaccines to biometric surveillance, blood draws, forced breath alcohol tests, forced DNA extractions, forced eye scans, and forced inclusion in biometric databases are just a few ways in which Americans continue to be reminded that we have no control over what happens to our bodies during an encounter with government officials. And that is absolutely true. It is absolutely true. We saw this introduce itself even before the time of DUIs, where you had a mandate to actually breathe into a piece of instrument or to actually give blood. Let's leave that be, because they take those same laws and they apply it into the complete and total obliteration of every liberty that you thought you had left. And everybody knows it. We've got to be careful, folks, because it's going down that road, and that road is getting very, very ugly. Look at the next section that he talks about here. This section is called gun control. After declaring more than a decade ago that citizens have a Second Amendment right to own a gun in one's home for self-defense, the Supreme Court has now been tasked with deciding whether the Constitution also predicts the right to carry a gun outside the home, or protects the right to carry a gun outside the home. Unfortunately, when it comes to the gun rights in particular, and the rights of the citizenry overall, the standard more evident than the governor's attempts to arm itself to the teeth, all the while viewing as suspect anyone who dares legally to own a gun, let alone use one in self-defense. Indeed, while it still technically remains legal to own a firearm in America, possessing one can now get you pulled over, searched, arrested, subject to all manner of surveillance, or treated as a suspect without ever having committed a crime, shot at, and killed. And that is absolutely true. Remember, the reason why the Second Amendment was given to us was to protect the First Amendment and all the other ones. It's a very, very important amendment. A citizenry without the right to defend itself by taking up arms is a citizenry who no longer has the power over the government in which it gives consent to rule. I don't have to read the Federalist Papers to tell you that. I don't have to get into this long, big, huge, drawn-out explanation over it. All I need to do is simply declare the truth. It's simple. It's really, really simple. Look what it goes on to say. This one is a big one. Show your papers, society. Oh, you guys are going to really, this one's going to really bother you because it hits very, very close to home with everything that's going on. With every passing day, more and more private businesses and government agencies on both the state and the federal level are requiring proof of this mandate, you know what I'm talking about, in order for individuals to work, travel, shop, attend school, and generally participate in the life of the country. If you don't believe me, go to New York for 2 days. Walk around in LA for a half a day. You know exactly what I'm talking about. By allowing government agents to establish a litmus test for individuals to be able to engage in commerce, movement, and any other right that corresponds to life in supposedly free society, it lays groundwork for a show me your paper society in which you are required to identify yourself at any time to any government worker who demands it for any reason. Such tactics can quickly escalate into a power grab that empowers government agents to force anyone and everyone to prove that they are in compliance with the mark of the beast. Oh, sorry, with every with every statute and regulation on the books. I threw in mark of the beast because that's exactly what we're talking about. We are talking about the economy of Revelation 13, folks. Revelation 13 will be a show me your papers society. I promise you that. How about this one? This one's ugly. This is the one that gets a lot of people in trouble because you have to be careful how you talk about this. But it is perhaps one of the strongest backbones for the despotic mindset that's being discussed right now. And this is the one that he calls singularity. He says here, welcome to the matrix. For example, the metaverse, where reality is virtual. Freedom is only as free as one's technological overlords allow, and artificial intelligence is slowly rendering humanity unnecessary, inferior, and obsolete. Indeed, it's no coincidence that Elon Musk has announced his intentions of implanting brain chips in humans sometime in 2022. The digital universe, the metaverse, is expected to be the next step in our evolutionary transformation from human-driven society to a technological one, remaining singularly human and retaining your individuality and dominion over yourself, mind, body, and soul in the face of corporate and government technologies that aim to invade, intrude, monitor, manipulate, and control us may be one of the greatest challenges before us. And boy, is that true. Kimberly Dixon, thank you for your support. You say we are being very conditioned right now. It's true. That's exactly what's going on. Patty Branton, thank you. I'm not so sure if I thanked you yet for your super chat. Thank you for your super sticker. It's completely true. That's exactly what we're seeing right now. The singularity thing is kind of a scary one because the reality of it is this is the technology that we know about that is going to exist in the tribulation, in the last days, and we're going there. Here's the final one that he points out, and it is powerful. This might be one of the most powerful paragraphs that he writes in the article. It's at the very end, and he calls it despotism. Even in the face of militarism, fascism, techno-tyranny, surveillance, etc., the gravest threat facing us as a nation may well be despotism, exercised by a ruling class whose only allegiance to power and authority, whose only allegiance is to power and authority. This is a very interesting statement that he makes. The American kestocracy, which basically is a government that's run by unprincipled career politicians and corporate thieves. This is what he writes here. This is a definition that panders to the worst vices in our nature, has a little regard for the rights of the people, which, by the way, is probably one of the best definitions of this word that I've seen. They continue to suck the American people into a parallel universe in which the Constitution is meaningless. And that is true. Our Constitution right now is truly on life support. The government is all-powerful, and the citizenry are powerless to defend themselves against government agents who steal, spy, lie, plunder, kill, abuse, and genetically inflict mayhem on and sow madness on everyone and everything in their sphere. Remember, we're going in that whole direction of group psychosis. That's exactly where we're going here. He says, it is a grim outlook for a new year, but it is not completely hopeless. If hope is to be found, it will be found with those of us who do their part at their local levels to right the wrongs and fix what is broken. I'm referring to the builders, the thinkers, the helpers, the healers, the educators, the creators, the artists, the activists, the technicians, the food gatherers and distributors, and every other person who does their part to build up rather than to destroy. When the people are the hope, I read that wrong. We the people are the hope for a better year. Until we can own that truth, until we can forge our own path back to a world in which freedom means something again, as I make clear, and he brings out his book or whatever, he says we're going to be stuck in this wormhole of populist anger, petty politics, and destruction that is putting one against the other. In such a scenario, there is no win. Now, I'm going to modify his article. I told you I would modify his article a little bit when I read it at the very beginning. I told you I would do it. So here goes the modification to his article. We as Christians have already won. We know we've won. We know where we're going and we know where the end is going to be. We know the plans that God has for us. But the only way we have hope of saving anything in this country is by a combination of two things. Number one is by people turning their hearts towards the Lord, because people will not understand freedom unless they have a close relationship with Jesus Christ. You don't know freedom until you have been relieved of the bondage that so overwhelms you and overtakes you. So you have to have freedom from the bondage that sin creates, and the only way you find that freedom is in Christ Jesus. The other way, that's the first thing that has to happen. Once you recognize what freedom is, then you take a stand. You do exactly what he said. You get involved at the local level. You go to the school boards. You get involved in the places of your work. You be thinkers. You think ahead of what's going on. You fight micro-tyrannies all around you, and you seek to make things right. But the only way that's going to happen is if you understand and value what freedom is, and you'll never understand and value what freedom is unless you're walking with Christ Jesus. It'll never happen. It'll never work. The only way that works is if you choose to walk with him. It's really simple. We are losing our freedoms, folks, but the way that we gain those freedoms back is to walk in freedom with the true and living God. That's the truth. That's the reality of it. What are we going to do? Are we going to sit there as Christians, the one who value freedom, the one who knows what freedom is like, the ones who have experienced salvation? Are we just going to sit there and allow our country to burn to the ground? I'm not telling you to take a stand so that we can save our country. I'm telling you to take a stand because God tells you to do it. And if God so chooses to, by his grace, pour it out upon the nation, then praise the Lord, we will rejoice for that. But we need to fight for righteousness because that's what God has called us to do. It's that simple. Folks, we can no longer allow this nonsense to take place. It can never happen. We must stand for righteousness. We must. It's incredibly important. Sean Potter, I want to thank you so much for your super sticker. John Wallace, thank you for your super chat. You say, thanks for what you do, James. Much love from Seattle. We love you right back. We want to thank you, AH Reporting LLC, for your super sticker. Don Holland, you say, spread the salvation of Jesus Christ. We have nothing to fear if you trust Christ. Be Paul. What you do with a person, not be afraid to die. That's how I want to live. Support each other. Very good, Don. God bless you. And that's what a true fighter does. And you express things that way because you have a relationship with Christ. You know exactly what that looks like. And that's the kind of thing that we need to do, okay? All right, let's take a few questions and comments. I've got a little bit of time, not a lot, but we're going to take some and continue this. Hopefully you guys have been inspired because, listen, we're getting to a point where we're seeing this a lot more. And I'm going to tell you this right now, you guys have to understand this. Without Christ, we have no inspiration to stand for these things. This is why I'm particularly bothered by people who call themselves Christians and pastors and church leaders who basically say, no, we should sort of give these rights up and who cares? No, the freedom that we have comes from the Lord, and we need to live like it, and we need to take a stand for righteousness. And that's what it's all about. Because the world we're living in is getting darker and darker and more evil, and we just can't forget that fact. Okay, so let's take some questions and comments. You guys know how to do it. You put question in all caps, and then give me your question, or put comment, and then give me your comments. That would be great. Would love to hear what you guys have to say. I will be paying attention right now as I speak to some of the questions that come through. Hopefully I'll be able to answer some. I know I won't be able to do that. Mildred, I know you didn't put a question there, but I just happened to see this on Facebook. You say, how can we stand, James? How? I'm lost on how. Listen, it's very simple. Get involved on a local level. Look and see what your city council is doing. Start making yourself known at city council meetings. Start knocking on doors. Make people aware of what's going on the school boards, what kind of decisions are being made. Go and stand in school board meetings. Run for elections in your local community. Of course, it's without saying we need to preach the gospel. We need to tell people about Jesus. That's a given. Those are all things we need to be doing on a regular basis. But these things are things that extend beyond that, in that we want to take the hope that God has given us and we want to apply it and try to take a stand for things that are righteous and walk away from that which is evil. Okay, Gabe, this is a question. You say, if we get rounded up, can we meet at your church for safety? Of course, I'm never closing the church down here. That's never going to happen. It's never going to take place. We're always going to remain open, and we're never going to do that. So, okay, let's see here. Val Halloran, you say, how do you answer someone who says that we shouldn't focus on the events happening because it violates Philippians 4, where it says to think on what's good, lovely, because we can't know the day or the hour? I would simply tell them to read the Bible in its particular context, because if that was true, then the Apostle Paul is the ultimate hypocrite. He's the one that wrote that, yet in a lot of his letters, he writes about all kinds of things that are negative. He says in the final days, we're going to see deception. He talks about perilous times. When you look at 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and chapter 5, he talks about all the things that are going to happen in the last days. He says, hey, listen, the coming of the Lord is going to be, or the day of the Lord shall be as a thief in the night. These are not things that fit the definition of that which is proper and pure and all that. But what people don't realize is purity does not just simply involve saying words that are pleasant or comfortable. Purity involves speaking the truth for what it is, and that's exactly how I would answer that question. So I think that the people that are throwing that at you are misinformed, probably because they're being taught by cowardly pastors who choose to do that because they have no desire to spend the time to physically exert themselves in engaging in this warfare as they should be. So, Michelle C23, you say, Pastor James, have you heard that Washington State is trying to pass a law forcing those that have not complied? I'm modifying your question slightly just for the purposes of where we're broadcasting, right? That are trying to pass a law forcing those that have not complied with the mandates into camps. Pastor Tom just talked about it. Yes, that's actually a righteous story. It's credible, it's real, and they are proposing to pass a law just like that. And that's kind of what inspired me to do the broadcast that I'm doing today. That's exactly right. So yes, they're going in that direction. I think the good news is if they end up doing that and all those people get gathered there, it will probably be the most healthy group of people that you see cluttered in the state, to be honest with you. I mean, that's the reality of it. It's sad, but that's probably the truth. Question, will you move to Iowa, Pastor James? No, I will not. I'm here. God's called me to be here in California to stay in the fight. And if he calls me to move out, then I will move out. But I love doing what I'm doing. And I've been asked by many people to go many places and do many things. But I'm here to do what God has called me to do. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. But thank you. That's very flattering and very kind of you. There's many questions coming in about the Washington camps. Again, I just spoke about that. Okay, let me see here. I am moving into Pastor James's church. Your view on what's happening in Europe. Actually, I'm going to be releasing many videos. Crystal Bell, thank you for that question. I'm going to be releasing a whole bunch of videos on that particular subject. We're talking about what's going on. As a matter of fact, I'm almost certain I need to double check this, that the video that I am releasing today is going to be on the mind control that China is doing right now. And that has a lot to do with what's happening in Europe. Then I'm going to do a video on the mark of the beast. And then the next 2 videos after that are all related to that kind of stuff. Actually, many of the videos that I'm doing, as a matter of fact, Russia potentially being the conduit that gets used by God to revive the Roman Empire is another video that I'm doing that's coming at the end of the week. There's a lot of that stuff happening right now, guys. There's a lot of stuff that we should all be looking at and going, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And actually that video is going to end up being released on Saturday. So we've got a lot going on, guys, and we've got to open up our minds and our hearts to know that Jesus is coming soon, and we don't have a lot of time left. And I think that that's kind of important. Okay. Let me see here. Kimberly Dixon, you say, can you try to invite TD Jakes on your cast one day? Well, the only reason why I would invite TD Jakes is to have a nice debate with him, and he has no interest. No one would have any interest in doing that that's in his position. I don't think so. So I guess the answer is I've got an open invitation to TD Jakes if he wants to come on. Come on and let's have a debate. How about that? And no, they weren't serious, B. Richards. I think that what was going on was they were being a little sarcastic. Okay. Let me see here. Let's see if we can take maybe 1 or 2 more. Let me see. Yes, I know many of you guys are telling me that Pastor Tom talked about it a few days ago. I think he talked about it with Monkey. I don't remember who it was that he talked about it with, but yes, that's a legit thing on that Washington thing. Oh no, you know what? I remember where he talked about it. He talked about it on his live broadcast yesterday because I watched it. I watched it late at night. So yeah, and he did a good job with it. He did a good job. Okay, let's see here. Maybe we'll take 1 more and then we'll actually close up in prayer because you guys are troopers and we've been doing this for over an hour. Let me see. There's there are so many questions here. Question, this is Cabello Fam. When will you be doing another Rumble video? You got one coming over the next few weeks. And this one will be a longer one that deals with the things related to you guys know what I'm talking about. So we'll spend some time talking about that because there's a lot of new stats that came out and we're going to end up talking about that. So that's what's going on. And we don't know what the Supreme Court, I think Grace Thompson, you asked, what's the update on the mandate? We don't know what the Supreme Court has ruled on it yet. Don't have any idea. So let me see here. Crystal Bell, I think I already thanked you for your super chat. Farmel, Fanatic, you and Tom are younger than me, so I can call you Tommy and Jimmy. God bless you. Thank you for your support. Well, Tom is older than me. Like, maybe 15 years older than me, and I still call him Tommy. I don't know if that's a bad thing. Anyway, thank you so much. All right, guys. Well, let's do this. Let's wrap it up. We're going to close in prayer. I want to thank you guys for all of your support. And tomorrow is going to be a great live broadcast. I cannot wait. I know Don Stewart's going to be with me. You guys are in for a treat. Put the word out. I think it's going to be awesome. You guys are also awesome. I mean, I think we may have hit 1,700 simultaneous watchers for the Monday show. That is a record. We have never been that high, but it's awesome to see you guys coming in and gathering. What a blessing. What a blessing. And thank you for your continued support. Let's continue to get this more and more and more through, that we would just glorify God in all that we do, you guys, and keep listening. We love having you guys come over, and I'm going to work harder and harder to give you guys the best content that I possibly can that we can grow. And then let's help Dale get bald. Okay, me and Dale are going to go bald. We're going to shave our faces. We're going to shave our heads if we can get to 100K subscribers on YouTube. So if you've not subscribed, do it. Help us get shaved. And actually, if we can get it done before January, if we can, or by the end of January, that's the promise, we'll actually videotape the process of getting cut. What do you think, Dale? Why not? All right, why not? Okay, love you guys. Let's pray. Ask the Lord to go before us. Father in heaven, we just thank you so much, Lord, for this time. And we're so grateful, Lord, for the opportunity that you've given us to gather together as the saints. I thank you for these amazing people that have gathered around, Lord, that are a part of this. We pray that you would just go before us now, fill us with your spirit, keep us seeking you. We love you, God. We thank you, and we ask these things in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, you guys, God bless you. We love you so much. And don't forget, in a half hour, we will be releasing the new video, and you won't want to miss this one. This is on China's mind control. It's a pretty good one, okay? Love you guys. God bless you.